once I learned about aversives, I was like, oh, what are they? Okay, the prong collars, slip leads, anti-bark devices. What was the other stuff?
E-collars.
Bark collars, e-collars, anti-barking device, electronic training aids. And I just think, call a spade, you know what I mean?
Yep. I'm very big on that. Very, very big on that.
Yeah, why?
Um,
What is it like the language? And then I looked further into it. I realized this is £1 billion industry.
what the tool industry.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, big
yeah,
money,
yeah,
big
yeah.
money. But the thing is, an industry can be worth £1 billion for many reasons. Like for instance, it being an effective product, it being a
Hmm.
product that actually works, is a good way of looking at it, right? So okay, let's explain what aversive is for people who don't know. If I use the language like I'm going to use an aversive, what I mean to say is that I'm going to do something to the dog that the dog does not enjoy. The dog doesn't want to happen again. Okay. Now that might be in the shape of a little pop on the lead. That might be in the shape of me actually like with one or two fingers grabbing the dog's collar and going no in his face and just sitting there with the dog until the dog regulates whatever emotion has caused the problem in the first place. That could also be considered aversive because you're denying the dog the ability to move around and escape that pressure. So that's going to be something he doesn't want to be repeated in the future. Now, where does that place into your training and why should that be a part of your training? Now again, we have to be, this is case by case. I can't say this is where you would use a punishment and this is where you don't. It doesn't really work like that. But the clinical definition of a punishment is something that reduces the frequency of a behavior. That's it. That is it. So a very easy example of this would be when you get in your car and you forget to put your seatbelt on. Bing, 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 bing. That's aversive. That's aversive to your nervous system. The tone of that is designed to go through you a little bit to make you
Hmm.
put your seatbelt on. That's aversive. That's called aversive conditioning. Now, I think we can all agree that that little sound coming on in your car, which might be me doing this on a prong collar, we can all agree that that sound in your car does not cause any emotional distress for you that lasts you your entire life
Yeah, it's just
because
annoying
because
for like a few
it's
minutes.
just annoying. And so, but then what you do when you get into your car next time is you put your seatbelt on quicker. You learn how to avoid it. And so there's no worry about that noise because you know how to switch it on and off. And so the problem that people have with aversive, or the problem that people have in understanding what an aversive is that they think I'm taking a dog's head off or really yelling at the dog or pinning the dog down. I think these are ridiculous methods. Um, like the whole domineering a dog. If I could press one button on every single pet owner that would give them something that I know about dog training, it would be the ability to be a teammate, to constantly, no matter what you do with your dog, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, be a teammate. And a good teammate is not going to let you mess up over and over and over again in front of him. A good teammate's going to pull you aside and go, bro, you can't do that. And when we're able to have these conversations with dogs at a very, very normal level, conversational level, 80% of the time that's enough. With most dogs, especially most pet dogs. Working dogs, there's a very different conversation to be had, and it takes a long time to understand the use of aversives in working dogs from like a fundamental place, as in
Hmm.
like the difference of the scale, because you're dealing with an MMA fighter as opposed to a kindergartner. You get me? And so like naturally we can't say that these dogs are trained the same ever. It's not ever going to be how it. But just because a dog is more intense, it doesn't mean to say that you have to be more aversive. It just might mean to say that there are going to be some things in that dog's behavior that you need to practice interrupting with something that is an aversive, like chasing prey. There's no clinical literature whatsoever, no matter how much the force-free argument wants to say that there is absolutely no clinical literature whatsoever that suggests that you can recall high prey drive dogs away from prey without the use of an effective and well-timed aversive.
Yeah,
There's none.
but it's also managing the environment, surely.
Yes, absolutely, you're going to be managing the environment, but if I am able to give my dog off-lead freedom, that gives my dog a lot more than just a walking along line. That gives my dog the availability to discover things on his own. That gives my dog the availability to develop self-regulating behavior, to like learn how to maybe avoid this dog that's looking at him a little bit weird. If I'm on a long line or some sort of lead with the dog constantly, the dog never really gets to develop those skills. And if I'm raising a dog, I want the dog to develop those skills that are coming from him, not from me, is that he can decide to do this stuff. And I think that, yes, you could make an argument, you could do this on a long line with the dog and you could manage that if you want. But I have a way of fixing it. I have a method that works and it causes no emotional fallout for the dog whatsoever. My dog believes that sheep are not to be messed with under any circumstances. He knows how to avoid that aversive. And so because of that, my dog is perfectly like relaxed around sheep because he knows that this sensation on the e-collar will only come in if I intentionally try and hurt one of those animals. It's very important that you know how to use this equipment though. Education is everything. If I gave somebody who doesn't understand carpentry a bunch of tools for carpentry and said, make me a table, well, you have the tools, but you have no idea how to put the table together. So the tools are useless to you.
See, this is the thing, isn't it? Because, so there's two things, right? Firstly, I'd love to understand how desperate people are when they get to you, because I'm assuming, and could be wrong, and would love to hear your input, they would have tried a multitude of things before they
Not
hire
all
a
the time.
trainer. No?
Well, before they've hired a trainer, yeah, absolutely. They've usually tried every TikTok shop, Halty, harness, different thing under the sun, and they've tried this trainer and they've tried that trainer. But sometimes I'll get people who have just bought a dog, they like my social media, and they message me. That's also just something that I don't always get really, really difficult cases now, which is, to be honest, quite nice. Like it's
So
a
preemptively.
Yeah, sometimes. Preemptive is always the best kind of client. Or what you call proactive is always better than reactive. You know.
I've met a couple of people who have had small little, animals who were barking incessantly, and they were growing up in an environment where, flat living, for example, so that potentially causes problems with neighbors. And what they chose to do was invest in these anti-bark devices. And what I found really interesting from that conversation is that they didn't know how to use them, but they still used them because they looked for a quick fix, a quick solution. And then secondly, what I found even more interesting is there was this perceived idea that the more you spend on it, the more effective it's going to be. So actually, these devices can be quite expensive.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's just bizarre to me.
So I think the difficulty is where does the argument truly start and where does it truly end here? Because I could make a very strong argument that head halters suppress dogs quite extensively, and I could show you a lot of evidence for that as well. And I could show you 16 years of taking dogs off of those equipment and them going, oh my God, oh God, get it off me. And do you know the thing that goes? The thing that goes around here. I could show you that most dogs, again, you don't decide what's aversive to the dog decides. So I could show people many, many dogs that I put a head halter on and the ears go back, the head goes down, and because the pressure that you're putting on the dog there is across a very sensitive part of the dog, across a very, very, there's loads of airways, there's loads of blood vessels in here, and obviously how sensitive a dog's nose is. You've got a lot, and you'll actually see a lot of dogs who have been on head halters for years. They'll have an actual ditch in their muzzle. You will not get any of that with an e-collar or with a prong collar, but we have none of the same emotive argument around the head halter. And I think to myself, like, this thing not only suppresses dogs, because that's all it's designed to do, really. It's designed for you to lead the dog like a horse, and if the dog pulls, the dog's head gets snapped back. And the ironic thing about this is that the most frequent use of this equipment is usually the people who are grand sort of standing on their soapbox a little bit about how good a person, how good their morals are because they don't punish dogs. And it's like, well, actually, your dog is being punished currently with this thing on its head. And again, it's because people don't actually understand the nuanced response of what is aversive. they just hear aversive and then they go into an emotional place, or they hear e-collar and they go, you shock dogs. And it's like, well, why do we not have the same outrage with cows that touch electric fences? Why are we not ripping these fences down? Because they're effective and they actually keep the cows safe. But and there's a lot more voltage going through an electric fence than an e-collar. But it's okay to do it to
Yeah.
a cow. It's not okay to do it to a dog. So there's no moral consistency there for me. And my problem with the lack of aversives in training boils down more to the moral inconsistency for me.
Which will always exist, because it doesn't matter which way you slice and dice it, there's going to be a counter argument. I think ultimately, and this came to light recently, where a trainer was teaching her trainers how to use these tools. And the argument was, leave it to the individual to follow their morals, values, principles, etc., etc. And when I think about aversives, what I think about is the multitude of people who will A, not know how to use them properly, if you can, and B, people who will look for quick fixes, and all the animals that will suffer as a result of those impulsive decisions and ignorance. And that's what makes me emotional. I think it's very different if you dedicate your life to it and you dedicate 24 hours a day and you train your dogs and you spend your time with them and you know what is too much and you stay within a healthy boundary, exactly that level of stress, that micro stress that we spoke about at the very beginning. But I personally wouldn't say that I would trust the majority of people to know how to do that.
And I think that's probably the fairest argument against these tools that I can probably truly combat with. But if I was going to combat with that point, I think we get very quickly into like almost utilitarian ideas around who should own what and why. Now, the question is, if we're going to regulate the use of these tools, let's say to professionals, let's just say we could press a button and do that. Well, who watches the watcher is the issue. Now, there's a million and one ways that we can use these tools. But all I'm saying, and I'm not even necessarily saying that everyone needs these tools or everyone should have them. I'm just simply saying that there is a place for them in dog training, and we have to be able to have a conversation about it. In fact, I think the last e-collar that I used on a client's dog was a Rottweiler that I worked for 6 months previous before I put the dog onto an e-collar. Now, there are a lot of actually very good arguments that would suggest that if the e-collar was to provide clear communication in the first session, then there's no reason to not use it in the first session. But you have to know the dog, and you have to know how the dog is likely to respond. You have to understand how to set that up, and you also have to make sure that the dog can recover if the dog does have a big adverse reaction, which, by the way, a lot of the time doesn't happen. This is a scaremongering tactic as far as I'm concerned with people who don't understand these tools. They say that one experience on an e-collar can scar a dog for life. When you observe what they're saying, it doesn't actually hold up under any sort of logical scrutiny. It's just, and again, like I say, I have many friends that are on the opposite side of this proverbial fence. But I do find that when I combat with them about these ideas, they run up to a point, and then they don't seem to be able to articulate why past that point. Like, sorry, I don't mean to ramble, but a very easy one is, can you show me one animal that has ever existed in the evolutionary history of this planet that has not learned from some form of aversive means? And if the answer to that question is no, then why is our dog any different? There's not a single animal, whether from the environment or from predators or from other members of the same species or from plants or like poisonous plants, eating the wrong berries at the wrong time. All of these things become genetic memory. So the animals learn to stay safe throughout the passing of this knowledge. Don't eat those berries. If that rustle in the bushes is over there, go climb that tree. These are all aversively conditioned ideas, and then all of a sudden we get to dog training, and then they don't apply whatsoever to any. So all of these mechanisms that have been evolved over millions and millions of years to help the animal
Yeah.
understand aversive conditioning have
But
just
those
suddenly
things are
disappeared.
natural. Yeah,
Of
but
course.
it seems like those things are natural, and this kind of makes every individual pet owner the judge, the jury, and the executioner. And based on how those people are feeling on a particular day and their level of tolerance, they then decide what is appropriate for their dog. More
So
often than not understanding that the dog is not actually antagonizing a situation. A dog is just being a dog in a human-centric world.
fully. Now, the thing is though, the dog has to live its life in a human-centric world. And so if we're going to use the adage of the dog is living in a world that isn't really that conducive with it, but like we can show you ways, or that we can show the dog ways of existing better in that world and existing in a more conducive manner to keeping it safe, to keeping it accountable, to keeping it happy, to keeping it alive. You know, um, if I have a method that can explain this to the dog, and maybe it involves aversives at some points or another. Now, again, what I want to say is I would say 80 to 90% of what I do with the average dog is positive reinforcement. It's relationship building stuff. But in order to have a good relationship with anyone, not just a dog, like with your partner, with your business associate, whatever, you have to understand that there are boundaries that are at play. And if you push that boundary, there might be a consequence. And that's not uncommon in human psychology. And it's actually very well accepted that if you lay a boundary and somebody pushes it, that there is usually an overt reaction, an aversive reaction, shall we say. But with dogs, we're not allowed to say that. And I think that that's very odd. I think that that's very strange. And it makes me wonder what motivates these people, because it certainly isn't the truth. And I think that I might catch a lot of heat for this, but I'm sort of used to that. I'm very big on speaking my mind to the best that I can, anyway.
Well, it's welcome. It's really welcome. I think ultimately you've got to stay true to yourself. A part of me would like to believe that, because most people believe that what they're doing is right, right? They believe that we all believe we have the best intentions, and I think my pain comes from knowing there's so much I don't know, and knowing there are so many things that so many other
You're
people also
already
don't
you're
know.
but you're already in such a better position than 99% of the populace. If you're aware of what
Yeah,
you
but
don't if you're aware of what you don't know, you're further ahead. You're always further ahead. You know, like I've been in this game 16 years and I still get humbled fairly regularly.
yeah,
You know, and
but
that's
it's
very important for
painful.
people to hear. Yes, and it's
Yeah.
painful. You know, like I'm going in November, I'm going down to do a full week of being the guy in the bite suit, a decoy course held by somebody I massively respect in the industry. And that's going to be very intimidating for me. I'm going to be in a room with 20 other men that are much, much better at this than I am. And it's important for me to come out of that comfort zone, just like I'm asking my dogs to do. You know, like if I'm asking my dogs to be confident and forward and whatever else, then I obviously want to be part of that um, as well. I want to constantly develop what I understand, and I've often found that decoys, the guys in the bite suits, are some of the most knowledgeable people you will ever meet on reading dogs. As far as their ability to understand what is going on inside the head of a dog, you're going to struggle finding people who can read a dog better than the best decoys in this country.
Yeah. It seems to be, I don't want to make this a gender thing, but like it seems to be a very masculine thing.
Yeah,
Like the kind of
yeah.
subculture of dog training and then dog competitions and things like that. The man versus beast thing. You see it in fishing, you see it in a whole host of different sports. Why do you think that is? Because also what the irony of that is the use of tools. I don't know. I think it's really curious. We don't really have to go into that with too much depth,
Oh
but
no. I think it's worth answering though. So as far as masculinity or femininity goes, I could pull out off the top of my head three fantastic female handlers that have actually done more in the bite work sport than I have. April Hume, Emma at Raven Canine, she's fantastic. And there's Phoenix Canine as well. She'll have to forgive me, I can't remember her name right now, but Phoenix Canine. These are three fantastic, balanced female handlers that are fantastic personalities in the game of dogs and also great representatives for the balanced method, because you can see just how impressive their dogs are. And I don't mean impressive just in what they can do, but in also how they do it. This is what people often miss, and there are some people that might even say your dog's keeping its head up in the heel because it's scared it's going to get zapped on a collar, which is a ridiculous thing to say. Because if you think that I can heel this dog with no e-collar on a trial field for 750 paces, and that dog's head is not going to drop once when it doesn't have an e-collar on, you're being silly. The head is kept up with value, with drive, with enthusiasm, and it shows a lack of understanding when people see an e-collar and they assume things, you know. But to answer your question properly about the masculinity side of things, I think if we're going to be just completely common sense, let's just look at it, I call a spade a spade. It's more of a masculine thing to do. It's a more of a masculine pastime to do, in my opinion. Firing a large 30 to 40 kilo dog at another human being is typically something men are going to be doing, because, you know, men are stupid. It's something that we're going to be doing more often than a woman's going to do. Now, that doesn't mean to say, obviously, there's no women. I just pulled 3 examples out.
Yeah,
but
no, there are. It's just majority, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, even now, I think if you look at particularly the pet dog scene, if we come away from the working world, but the pet dog scene, because I'm part of the pet dog scene as well, but a lot of the balance community in the pet dog scene, a lot of the mentors or mentees, sorry, that I've had come through my door have all been women, you know, and I've helped them as much as I can with their career. I've obviously imparted some of my wisdom, hopefully, and I actually see more women now. I do think that you have a point with the sort of balanced community having a masculine edge to it, I would say. And there is definitely ego involved in both sides of the industry. I've been a part of that problem at some point or another, I imagine.
Hey, 10 out of 10 for self-awareness.
No, listen, it's something I battled with for a very long time, so I'm very aware of it. But yeah, I just think people need to put their egos to the side to the best that they can. I know a lot of people don't understand their ego, but they put it to the side the best they can, and just talk about dogs, and just talk, like, go train your dog. Like, show me your dog. I don't care about your method. Show me your dog, and then after that, you can tell me how you done it. Because ultimately, we could sit and debate online I could sit and debate online with, for instance, a force-free trainer or a positive-only trainer, and I could go back and forth with this person, but ultimately, if I pull my dog out, it looks like a dog trainer's dog. Often, I don't see much coming from force-free trainers' dogs because they don't have very high standards for them. And I think that that's odd. I really, truly think that that is odd. Your whole life, your career, your lifestyle is centered around dogs, and you want to limit your dog to sort of being a bit of like a slower-paced dog. Now, I'm not saying every force-free dog is like that. A lot of force-free guys love their agility, and they're great at agility as well because you're using a lot of intrinsic reinforcement from the agility course. But the average, let's just say the average, the 5 out of 10 force-free dog trainers, and by the way, there's many 5 out of 10 balanced dog trainers as well. When they pull a dog out, it doesn't look like a dog trainer's dog. And maybe that's judgmental for me. Maybe that's judgmental for me to say. But I think a dog trainer, if I'm going to charge you to come and get advice off me on how to train your family member, I should be able to pull a dog out that makes you go, quite clearly, this person knows a bit more about this than I do. And it should be obvious. It shouldn't be something that you're questioning at any point. It should be like, wow, I've either never seen a dog do that, or the way that that dog is looking at that handler is something that I'm really, really, like, if you see something in the relationship of the handler and the dog, great. But I invite you to watch how many of these dogs are simply being brought out of a van and sniffing the floor. It's more often than they'd maybe care to admit.
Okay. So from your perspective, what makes a good trainer? What makes an exceptional trainer?
What makes an exceptional trainer is a different question.
Yeah, because if you've got high standards for your dog, I'm sure you've got them for yourself.
Yes, absolutely I do. Absolutely I do. I wanna compete on the world stage at some point. Whether or not that's going to happen, whether or not I'm good enough to do that is another matter altogether, but we shall see. Time will tell. What makes a great? I'll answer both of them. What makes a good trainer? A good trainer is the willingness to be wrong, and the willingness to learn. Assume that you're wrong. that's a good way of looking at dog training. And I think that the reason that people say, oh God, Jack, you can really articulate your points, is because I've sat and I've battled and debated myself over these things. And I've made sure that the conclusion that I come to is something that resonates. It's something that I go like, this isn't just what I think, it's what I believe. And I can back that belief up with this, this, and this, and this, and this, and this evidence that I can stack up and hand to you. So I think that that's the first one. That's a good trainer. That's how you're going to differentiate the egomaniacs in the game and the people who are going to listen to you about your dog's problems. Exceptional trainers, these are very unique people. For instance, I've been in the game like a long time, 15 years or whatever it is, 16 years. And I know a gentleman called Jace, and he is one of the most talented dog handlers I've ever met in my life. And he started training dogs like maybe 3-4 years ago. And he just has this way, this movement style, the style of how he does obedience, the style of how he puts everything together for the dog, the style of how he does bite work is all really natural to him. And he's obviously spent a lot of time and money and effort developing it. That's not to take anything away, but he's naturally a gifted handler. He's naturally very gifted. I had to get smashed up a few times to get some messages through to my body, whereas Jace seems to have picked up very, very fluidly. But I think an exceptional trainer is usually somebody with a little bit of a gift, but also somebody that works harder than everyone else. Is the first person to show up and the last person to leave. That's an exceptional trainer.
What does that giftedness look like to the untrained eye? Because this is the thing, I think what happens often is people looking for trainers end up going with people that they like.
Yes.
As opposed to knowing what to look for.
Correct. What it looks like anything that you see the dog do with the handler should look like it's painted, flowing from one thing to the next. There should be no clunk. Oh, it's not that there should be no clunkiness. There is always going to be clunkiness. Your dog is not a robot. But there's an element of ease with everything that the dog is doing with the handler. There's an element of excitement and motivation from the dog as well, that you can see the dog is alert, committed to the activity, has given its heart, body, soul into this activity. And on top of that, every time the handler might come near the dog, that the dog is focused on task. The dog is not maybe leaning away from him or pulling back or showing a lot of like stress signals. Jace has I'm using Jace as an example, but like a personal hero of mine in the industry is Ivan Balabanov, who's a 3-time world champion. And I think he is truly an exceptional mind in the game of dogs. I don't just think he's a good trainer or an exceptional trainer. I think the way he thinks about dog training is unique and in a really complicated way. It's really simple.
Do you know, slightly off topic, I'm so sorry. I was just thinking about the competitions. I was listening to you. It just dawned on me that we're running out of time. And I was like,
no, that's fine.
Oh my gosh, I really want to ask about this. The IGP competitions, is that just for trainers or can anyone take part in those?
Anyone can take part in them. You just have to be part of a club, so an IGP club. So I travel out to Cheshire once a week to go to my club, where we do bite work and we do tracking and we do obedience in the format of IGP. So you'd have to get into a club, accepted into a club, and then past that, it would just be about the work rate that you put in. You know, like how often are you showing up? How often are you getting that work in? You know, and building the dog into the best version of itself. That's the sort of, I suppose that would be the sort of moral tagline that sits underneath my training, would be like, how do I make this dog the best version of himself? You know.
I guess my question is around members of the public who don't have the same level of knowledge, then get these working dogs with the intention of training them for this particular type of competition environment, and not being able to, I guess, control or.
So I think the great thing about IGP as opposed to other bite sports is the barrier for entry is a bit more stringent. It's a little bit harder to get in. You have to be sort of assessed. You have to be assessed. You like at my club, for instance, you'd have to come down, unless you're running on the recommendation of somebody that we trust at club. You would have to come down for an assessment first, and then it would be decided at that point whether or not it would be wise to continue. What's really important about dogs that are doing bite work is that, again, a lot of people might not like the sound of it, or they might not even like the execution or the fact that dogs are doing it at all. It's one of the few places left in dog sports where the dog can truly show you what he's made of. And I think that if we lose that because of some arbitrary fear that, maybe a member of the public will go and train this poorly, I think that is kind of like saying, okay, well, we shouldn't allow anyone at this boxing gym because what if somebody goes out on a night out and starts knocking people out? And it's like, well, hold on, that's not the boxing gym's fault. This is a product of the character that you're dealing with. And if that falls on that person's head, that person has to take responsibility for it. If she's a trainer and her dog has been in a situation where he's smashed another person or bit another person, then obviously there needs to be some accountability for that with regards to from the trainer's end. But then there's also an element of it that a lot of people who do bite sports, maybe they don't prioritize the control aspect as much as they should. Maybe they build too much dog through nothing but inexperience. This definitely happens. Of course it does. But again, it goes back to the boxing gym analogy, is that if a person has a proclivity towards being violent, does that mean to say that they should never ever be allowed to utilize violence in a controlled manner? And I would argue the opposite. I would argue that it's better for violent people to have outlets that are safe and constructive for these urges, same as dogs. Like Presa Canarios are bred to hunt and kill and fight. That is what they've been in the Canary Islands. That's what they've been bred to do. Pit bulls in Hawaii are bred to hunt and kill boars. These are dogs that you cannot convert into a pet dog. It's just it's not possible. You'll end up being in hospital or dead. These dogs are the types of dogs that nobody sees because we don't breed them anymore. We don't breed them in the pet sphere. You buy from the pet sphere, you're not going to get those particular dogs. That makes sense.
Really, really interesting. But there are still, yeah. I mean, it's just such a can of worms. I honestly feel
it
like
really
we've not
is. It
even
really is.
scratched the surface on this because I have, like all these, what's it called?
Yeah,
Neural pathways. It's like one's firing
Yeah.
here and the other one's firing. It's like, don't forget that one. Go back.
Absolutely.
This
No,
is
I've got time, so I've
fascinating.
got time. Yeah, no, it's something that I'm very passionate about, and it's something I've spent a long time educating myself in. And an opportunity to talk about it to somebody who's eager to listen is always something that I'm interested in.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. I mean, yeah, this is the thing. I think going into a conversation, I already know how I feel about certain things and I know my stance on certain things. I know where my values lie. But I also acknowledge and admit that that is within my limited experience. I don't have exposure to the amount of dogs that you do. And I know that it's really hard, even hearing the word predator, because I was on a different trainer's website today and I was like
So
that feels really harsh.
I think the reason that I use that word is to bring people back to the biology of their dog. It's not to make people have this image of this snarling predator. It's to recognize that there are mechanisms inside of this dog that are hardwired into this animal that are predatory in nature. The reason that horses don't chase things and they run away from things is because they're prey animals. The reason dogs chase things and not run away from things, if they're going to chase after prey animal and so on, is because they're predators. So they've evolved from predators. They're a domesticated predator would be the best categorization of what a dog is. And we have to respect these mechanisms, particularly in breeds where those mechanisms are a little closer to the surface. If that makes
sense. Yeah, no, it does make sense. What do you think we could learn from dogs?
So many things. You can learn a lot about yourself from training a dog properly. You can learn about how patient you are. You can learn about how tolerant you are. You can learn about how clear you are, how good of a communicator you truly are. You can learn how your emotions affect your environment. That's a huge one that I really try and distill into my clients, is that the way that you interact with the environment not only has an effect on the dog, but it has an effect on the environment itself. And that environment feeds back to you and you feed back to the environment constantly. And the dog is very attuned to this. I think we could learn awareness. Self-awareness would probably be the most poignant thing that I think that dogs could teach us, because dogs are not thinking about what's going to happen next, or some dogs might be if they're very worried or nervous, but a lot of dogs are just simply existing and cracking on with it. And when people, rescue dogs are a good example of this, they hear a bad story about their rescue, and then that colors the way that they train their dog. That story colors the way that they treat the dog, and they confirm to the dog that this acting weak and fragile is something that's reinforcing and something that is going to incur more attention from the people around them. And so that must be correct to the dog. The dog's getting some form of attention or reinforcement for it. And so the behavior that's attached to those emotions gets reinforced, not the emotion itself. And I think, like I say, if we could really sit back and truly understand how much people don't, I don't have enough time left to explain how much we could learn from dogs, how much I've learned from dogs, how much dogs have developed me personally and my relationships with other people, with my partner, how much it's made me realize that most of the time that I'm getting frustrated or flustered, it's because of me and not because of anything else. To
Yeah.
that would probably be what I would distill it down to.
That's lovely, because that's that self-awareness you were talking about, but having that self-awareness means that, you're not blaming your environment, you're not blaming your dog, you're not blaming your partner, you're not blaming everything external to
Mm-hmm.
you,
It's all intent.
for
It's all
your own
internal.
behavior. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Really
It's something that has
interesting.
to come from inside you.
Exactly. I have one last question for you, if that's
Go
okay.
on, fire it in.
Um, Can you give me an example of a preconceived idea that you might have had about a dog or dog behavior? Something that shifted for you in your mind where you thought it was this way and then learned it was not, and then kind of just talk me through that journey.
This might be difficult to articulate, but I do think I have an answer. Um, so there was a phase of my training where everything was what I would call very systematic with the way that I train dogs. So it would be, if the dog done X, then I would respond with Y. And that might be in the shape of a positive reinforcement schedule, like saying yes, feed, and whatever else, or that might be in the shape of just trying to problem solve something systematically. Now, what I focus on is coming away from those individual systems and looking at the concepts that sit underneath the training. It's the concepts that are the cement that hold all the bricks together on your wall of understanding with your dog. And the concepts are actually very easy to teach the dog. And I'll give you a very quick example to help articulate this point. Is if I'm teaching a dog that doesn't really like getting his nails trimmed, that's a very easy example. So my Presa Canario, he didn't like it at first. And if
He
I
didn't
teach the
like what,
dog that
sorry?
having his nails trimmed,
Oh, yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So he didn't like having them trimmed at first, and so I went through the whole approach of, I come over to you with the clippers and I say feed, and yeah, I go over to your paw and I touch your paw, then I feed again, and it was going nowhere. The dog was sort of taking advantage of this system. Is that if I slow this down, I get more reinforcement. You understand? So instead of that, I looked at it like a very common sense, like what a parent would do to a child that is refusing to get their toenails cut. Sit still. If you try and bite me, you're in trouble. Give me your paw. And then clip. There's a little bit of food. Clip, 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 clip. And when he tried to argue with me, I gave him a little tap on his nose. And I went, no. And then from that point, he knew that that response was off the table. And so he just let me do his pause. Now, where a systematic trainer would be at that for weeks on end of, I come close to you with the clippers, do this. Now, obviously, it depends on the dog's history and the dog's experience of it beforehand, but there is something really fundamental that's missing when we have to spend 3 weeks trying to teach a dog how to get his nails trimmed. I think that as far as just no, sit there and let me do it, that's a message I can get across to a dog fairly easily without any emotional fallout for the dog, and the dog reaches the destination that I want him to reach quicker. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. But that's a reflection of your level of tolerance, I guess, or patience in order to get
Yeah,
the desired result over a certain period of time. You're choosing the shorter path.
I'm choosing the clearer path to the dog. I'm choosing the path that shows me the most understanding as quickly as I can. Now, there is a adage in the dog training industry that if you are doing something quickly, you're probably doing it wrong. And I actually fundamentally agree with that a lot of the time. There are exceptions. There are common sense things where people will overcomplicate a problem, and not only do they overcomplicate it for themselves, they overcomplicate it for the dog as well. Because now the dog doesn't just have to think about getting his nails trimmed, he has to think about some weird reinforcement schedule that starts when I walk over with these clippers. Uh, uh, Actually, to give you a contrasting case, which was exactly the same behavior, I had a bull breed that came in, and the dog's toenails were like curling under its paws. And I said, put a muzzle on him. I'm going to walk over just with a flat collar. I didn't have any equipment on the dog, and he was a very sweet dog. He was conditioned to the muzzle. I tried to trim his paws, and he went ballistic at me. He went like muzzle punching my face. I was like, whoa, calm down. I went, and I stood there with him. I grabbed him by his collar, and I just went, enough. And I sat there with him until he regulated himself. It took about 12 minutes, and I know it took 12 minutes because I had filmed it. Took about 12 minutes for this dog to fully accept that he's not going anywhere. Just calm down. After that, I immediately went back to the paw, and I went, give me your paw. And then he gave it to me the second time, wouldn't let me trim it, blew up again. Same thing happened again. The next time it was 4 minutes he was held there for. And then the next time again, I got a nail trimmed. He blew up, and then after it, I took the muzzle off, and I went, good boy, super. I put the muzzle back on. So it showed him if you cooperate, that muzzle's going to come off. Put the muzzle back on, and then he let me do the rest of his nails. And I just had to be willing to have that argument with that dog, or let that dog have the argument with me, and not give anything back in the argument. I'm just going like, you're being weird here, bro. I'm just trying to trim your knee. I'm not, this isn't a complicated behavior I'm trying to teach you. So why would I complicate it for the dog?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And then now, by the way, now the dog actually quite enjoys getting his nails trimmed because he gets a little tin of sardines at the end. So he knows this.
Clever.
He knows this now.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. He knows this. And there will even be points now where he retrieves the clippers to his owners because he wants the tin of sardines. Like he's being pushy with it now.
Cute.
So
yeah,
and
that's cute.
and that change was not born from positive reinforcement. That change was born from, you're not going to do that to me. You're going to let me do this. And I think that if people look at aversive conditioning like in that tone, they'd have much more tract with it. It feels less offensive straight away.
Yeah. Well, as soon as you said the bop on the nose, like obviously I don't know what that looked like or anything like that, but that like, it's like, oh, these things does something to me. Like I'm feeling feelings here. You know, I don't know why. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because dogs can't speak. You just don't know.
No, but my dog, I can definitely understand my dog, and this is something that I like. My dog can speak. He just doesn't speak with his mouth. He speaks all the time. He's constantly speaking to me, constantly telling me what he likes. And that little bop on the note, I want to make this as clear as I can. When a dog like a Presa Canario is doing his job, whether it be hunting or doing protection work or whatever it might be, the level of pressure that those dogs can take are something that people have no experience with. So this on his nose was enough for him to go, oh, like that, and then go fine. Now, as far as how much, like for a child, for instance, if the kid was being a bit of a nutter and you just needed to interrupt it, and you just flick the back of his ear, he's going to turn around really quickly and go, ow. And then I can talk to the kid now because I've interrupted now I can because I've interrupted the behavior, and now I can say, do you know why I flicked you on the ear? And he's like, why'd you flick me on the ear? Well, it's because you're kicking off about that, and you need to calm down. And the only difference between a child and how we do this with a child and how we do this with a dog is that I don't have the verbal side of it with the dog. I show the dog through my actions, and that's where accountability from my end is so important. I can't do that. I can't sit down and regulate a dog if I'm frustrated. or if I'm
Yes.
flustered, or if I'm emotional, I'm sitting there and I'm showing the dog what I want, which is calm. It's calm, but it's confident, and it might even be firm, but it's calm. It's not. I always say to people, if you correct your dog when you're frustrated, you've left it far too long.
Do you know what? That's really interesting, and I think that's valid. I do think that's valid. I think sometimes when you come from an emotional place and you've lost self-control and self-respect, you act in ways that are not in the benefit of the other person or the animal or whatever. And that's a clear, like, indication, I guess, if you are not in control of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's a clear sign that you are off track.
This is something that we teach parents ad nauseum. This is something that parenting therapists and psychologists have been talking about for decades now. So a very famous way of teaching a toddler what no means is toddler is crawling around and baby toddler goes to poke his finger in the plug socket. He's a very famous psychologist online, and I watch a lot of his lectures, called Jordan Peterson. He's not particularly the most accepted person in the world, but I do think I do think the man. I've read a lot of Solzhenitsyn, and I've read a lot of Freud, and I've read a lot of Nietzsche. And one of the things that I really like in his explanation of how he teaches a toddler what no means is the toddler might crawl up to put his finger in the plug socket, and he says no, and he just holds the toddler by the ankle. Now, what's going to happen at that point is the toddler's probably going to get frustrated because he can't access the thing that he's curious about, and he's going to cry and protest. At the point where the toddler's crying and protesting, he just gently holds on to the toddler, and at the point where the toddler stops it, he lets the toddler go. And then the next day, it shows a reduction in the behavior of going towards the plug socket, and then eventually he just goes no, and the toddler has a little experience of that aversive experience. If I do that again, he's going to grab my foot. It's associative learning. So if I do X, then Y happens. Yeah. I don't think, and the only reason that is contentious in today's day and age is because people don't know how to have conversations unemotionally anymore, and particularly about their dogs, particularly about things that they love. But like I say, I think that if we could just have a few articulate voices talking about this as much as we can, then I think a lot more people will be open to a common sense approach to the use of aversives in training and so on.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Honestly, I'm so grateful, Jack. Thank you so much for this conversation. I've learned so much from you.
No, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the opportunity just to talk about what I love and what I'm passionate about. I really truly do appreciate it. I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful that you thought of me in the first place. So I'm just happy to have a conversation.
I found you online. I think it takes a lot of courage for people to have opinions in this day and age. And I could see in your content that you were really outspoken and you had some firm beliefs. And I thought, this is someone that I have to speak to, So I'm very glad that you accepted the invitation.
That makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. That's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. I hope that maybe in the future we could get you back on. I'm actually going to go out of my way now to find another type of trainer to hear a different type of perspective. And who knows, maybe one day we can get you all in the same room together.
Let's do it. I'll do it tomorrow. Watch me.
Amazing. Oh, cool. Right, well, I hope you have a lovely rest of your evening. And thanks again for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.